This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Good evening. I'd like to convene the Board of Fire Commission meeting for January 26, 2020. The first order of business this evening is a swearing-in ceremony, and I might mention that each of the persons who are on the call are muted at this moment in order for us to conduct the swearing-in ceremony. So I'm going to suspend the meeting and ask the persons who are going to be sworn in to please join me in the room. So the first person coming in for swearing in is Sarah Barbero.
All right, we're back to recording. It should be good.
Good evening. I'd like to reconvene the Tuesday, January 26, 2020 Board of Fire Commission meeting. This evening, we have on our call is our third select woman who is requested to address the commission. So, third select woman, please feel free to voice your comments. Are you able to hear me? Are any of the commissioners able to hear me?
I can hear you, but there's some weird feedback going on. That might be from the unmuted iPhone.
All right, let me mute the
Hello?
iPhone.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes. Please
This is
go ahead.
Sally.
Go ahead with your comments.
Well, the first comment I'd like to make is I was looking at your agenda and I thought I was on item 7, good of the fire department, Sally, to address the fire commission. But if you'd like me to talk now, I'm perfectly willing to do so.
Please.
Okay. Well, thank you. First, I would like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to address the fire commission tonight. And I also want to thank the First Selectman's office for assisting in arranging for my appearance tonight before your commission. I would like to comment on your last fire commission meeting of December 22nd, 2020, specifically with regard to item 6 on that agenda for that meeting. Under the heading, good of the fire department, it said follow-up Board of Selectmen 12/3/20. In my opinion, after hearing the discussion, I think the agenda item should have read a coordinated, orchestrated attack of the third selectman's character and integrity, because that was really exactly the purpose of that agenda item. It wasn't intended to discuss the Board of Selectmen meeting. It was intended to attack me personally. And first, I'd like to say that I was very disappointed that I was not given notice of your December meeting, and that so that I could have planned some comments or somehow been involved by phone in that meeting to participate. So I was disappointed in a lack of notice of that. And secondly, Mr. Chairman, you were in attendance at the 12/3/2020 Board of Selectmen meeting via Zoom. You were in the same room with the chief, and I was wondering if my comments were so offensive to you, why didn't you speak up then and there so you and I could have had a direct conversation rather than doing it this way? But with that said, let me get started with my response to your comments about me, Mr. Chairman. First, I just wanted to give a little bit of background about the December 3rd, 2020 Board of Selectmen meeting and the purpose of me asking the First Selectman's office for the chief to attend that Board of Selectmen meeting to give a presentation of the PSAR. I want to make it very clear what my purpose was. So a little background. First, I watched the October Board of Finance meeting. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. At the board, first of all, at the October Board of Finance meeting, the Board of Finance was told that the chief would give a PSAR presentation at the next monthly Board of Finance meeting in November, but that never happened. So within a few days of that November Board of Finance meeting, in which the chief did not appear, I contacted the First Selectman's office by email, and I wrote the following, and I'm going to read the email, or most of it. I am aware that we were successful in obtaining the Primary Service Area Responder, PSAR, designation. I was just thinking that it would be prudent and informative to our citizens if the fire chief would make such a presentation at the December Board of Selectmen's meeting. The Board of Selectmen meetings are the most watched of all meetings broadcast on NHTV. Also, for the past 2 to 3 years, the fire department has dominated discussions during budget season, including the special committee that studied the department for 7 months in 2018. Furthermore, with over 4,600 calls per year and more than 3,000 annual emergency medical calls, I think it is critical for our citizens to have a full understanding of not only what the PSAR means to the town, but how it will impact the nature and quality of medical services going forward. The best way, I think, is to inform the citizens by a Board of Selectmen presentation. Within an hour and a half of me sending that email to Val Gutkin at the First Selectman's office, she responded within an hour and a half and told me that the First Selectman agreed and thought it was a good idea. And so we come to the Board of Selectmen meeting on December 3rd, and prior to the chief starting his presentation, I read the following statement at the Board of Selectmen meeting. Quote, I requested this presentation to allow for me and the citizens to have a full understanding of not only what the PSAR means to the town, but how it will impact the nature and quality of medical services. And so we then had about a 1 hour and 15-minute discussion. About the first half of that was the chief's presentation, and the second half was questions and comments, mostly between myself and the chief. Mr. Chairman, I received many positive comments by phone and email thanking me for arranging this PSAR presentation, including thanks from Val Gutkin, the First Selectman's executive assistant, who told me immediately after that Board of Selectmen meeting how much she learned and how helpful the presentation was. So I would just like to say that I came into that meeting with 14 prepared questions for the chief. 12 of the questions were specific about provisions in the operating agreement between the town and Nelson Ambulance. I asked questions about the financial benefits of the PSAR. I asked if Nelson, what kind of coverage for medical calls Nelson would be providing. I asked about the emergency medical services delivery plan and when it was adopted, and I asked for a copy. I asked for a delineation of the differences between priority 1, 2, and 3 calls. I asked a lot of questions. I also asked about the bundle bill, which was not attached to my copy of the agreement, even though it was referenced in the agreement. I found out later that it wasn't finished yet. So I had many very specific questions that were answered by the chief, and also some of them, because of their legal ramifications, were answered by counsel, Mr. D'Onofrio. So I thought that those questions went very well. I did have 2 other questions. One was about the ladder truck going on medical calls, and that was a very dominant part of the meeting. In fact, I would think that dominated the meeting, the discussion of the ladder going to medical calls. And then I also asked whether I asked a very specific and simple yes or no question, whether any chief or any deputy chief ever worked for Nelson, and the answer was yes. And I left it at that. I moved on immediately to the next question. But what I found striking about your comments, Mr. Chairman, at your 12/22 Fire Commission meeting is that you stressed this so much. In fact, you stated at, let me get this right, you stated, I have the specific timestamp when you were discussing this. You said that, hold on. Well, you were saying that you thought that my question about asking if any chief or deputy chief had ever worked for Nelson was the crux of the entire presentation. And that is a quote from you, the crux of the entire presentation. And I really had a problem with that because it took up about 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds of the entire presentation. Oh, here it is. At 1 hour and 6 minutes and 21 seconds, you said, quote, one comment was way off in left field and really the crux of what she wanted to be discussed. And the question was, did any of the chiefs work for Nelson? That was so off base, it smacked of backroom deals. And I resent that the question was even asked. Again, I asked the question based on, I'm sure you're aware of Code of Ethics Section 30-4. And I asked that question because of that Code of Ethics section that covers entering into contracts. And I asked the question based on information that I was provided 2 years ago when someone told me that the PSAR 2 years ago was going to go to Nelson. And so I simply asked that question. It was answered yes. I didn't follow up with any other further questions about the Code of Ethics or the timeframes contained in provision section 30-4. I asked the question and it was answered and I moved on. And why you chose to focus on a 10-second question and answer is beyond me because to me that was such a minor part of the meeting. I can't help how you interpreted the question and the fact that you assumed, and that was the word that you used. In fact, let me read from the minutes of your 12/22/20, the proposed minutes, because you haven't voted on them yet. You said in the minutes, the proposed minutes for that meeting, Chairman Nuzzolillo, this is a quote, Chairman Nuzzolillo discussed Third Select Woman's reference to whether or not any of our chiefs worked for Nelson, and in his mind, it was an inappropriate question that was alluding to a backroom deal or some collusion within the fire department, which is totally untrue, unquote. I find it incredible that of an hour and 15 minutes of productive questioning and answers and comments back and forth, that you would include that in your minutes and work and include something that you're assuming that just isn't there. And in fact, your assumption that I was alluding to a backroom deal, makes me wonder why you're so defensive about the whole thing. Again, it was a 10-second question that was asked and answered, and I moved on immediately. So I found that very disturbing, and I don't think that it should even be in your minutes. I also would like to comment on a statement that you made at 1 hour, 3 minutes and 30 seconds of your meeting, where you accused me of saying that no positive comments of appreciation, no, quote, no job well done, unquote. You were criticizing me for not saying anything positive about the fire department. Well, let me just say something, Mr. Chairman. I tried to say something positive about the fire department a couple of years ago during public comment at a Board of Selectmen meeting. And I was having a discussion, a spirited discussion with Mr. Marino of the fire department. That was the meeting where he called me a terrorist. Well, I tried to express my appreciation and tell him how great a job I thought the fire department personnel were doing. And he immediately, Mr. Chairman, cut me off, shut me up and said, no, we do not want to hear that. We do not need to hear what a good job we're doing. We know we're doing a good job. And so I made a pledge to myself from that meeting and how disrespectful he was to me at that meeting. And I've written publicly about this. It's no secret. I made a pledge to myself based on how he treated me when I tried to say something positive, that he just shut me up and said he didn't want to hear anything positive from me at all. And another specific comment I would like to address is what you said at 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 39 seconds. And you said, Mr. Chairman, about me, and I quote, I appreciate our third selectman investigates the fire department, but she is not a firefighter, has no skills to manage the fire department, and that is what she looks to do. That is her mission. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to tell you what my mission is. I'm in my 8th year on the Board of Selectmen, and my mission is simple, to provide the best town services at the lowest possible cost. And in particular with the fire department, since the chief first requested a 50% increase in personnel, several budget seasons ago now, I have been consistent from day one that we need to activate a second ambulance, not a second engine, based on the 70% of calls being medical. And I want ambulances to go on medical calls and fire engines and ladder trucks to go to fires. I have been consistent about that from day one. I am not trying to manage the fire department. I am not trying to tell the fire chief how to attack a fire or how to use his personnel at a fire scene or an accident scene or anything like that. But I, just like members of the Board of Finance, have a direct responsibility when it comes to the taxpayers and the mill rate in this town. And the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen are policymakers. The Board of Finance, every time they say no to a budget request, is making a policy decision. And that is my prerogative as a member of the Board of Selectmen and a former member of the Board of Finance. I served for 4 years in the 1980s on the Board of Finance, to give my opinions on the best use of tax money. I am not trying to manage the fire department. Was Mr. Frieda, who also has no fire department skills, he was never a firefighter, was he trying to manage the fire department when he commissioned the work study group in 2018 to study the fire department and make recommendations for improvements? Was Mr. Monaco and Mr. Hallahan, who served on the work study group, were they trying to manage the fire department? No, they were doing their jobs as Board of Finance members, and I'm doing my job as a member of the Board of Selectmen. And if any other department, I'm constantly being asked, why are you picking on the fire department? I'm not picking on the fire department, Mr. Chairman. I am responding to tremendous increases in budgetary requests and in budgets. I will give you an example. In fiscal year 18-19, we had a fire department increase of 8%. In 1920, an increase of 14%. And in 2021, this fiscal year, an increase in 11%. You accused me of being derelict in my duties, Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting. It would be derelict if I failed to question such increases, and especially when other departments, including the police department, are going up maybe 1% to 2% a year. If, for example, the Public Works Department all of a sudden wanted a 37% increase in the budget over 3 years, you could be darn sure, Mr. Chairman, I would be researching sanitation and snow plowing and dump trucks. But it is the fire department in recent years that has made tremendous requests for increases, and that is why I have been focusing on the fire department, not picking on the fire department. And I would also like to comment on something that you said at 1 hour and 47 seconds. You said, and I quote, about the third selectman, with regard to this is a quote, with regard to increases in our budget, she would be derelict in her duties as an elected official if she didn't focus on what the increase is. I resent the implication that I am derelict in my duties, Mr. Chairman. I keep getting elected. I'm in my 8th year because of the tremendous effort and research and preparation I put into my office. Whether I'm attending Board of Finance or Board of Selectmen, Fire Commission, Police Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, or even Cemetery Commission meetings, I put a great deal of time and effort into my preparation and research. And in fact, Mr. Frieda has commented publicly that I am probably the most active and involved third selectman in recent memory. And I respectfully request that you withdraw and or apologize for that comment calling me derelict in my duties. I only mentioned, and as I said, I only mentioned the budget increases in response to a question asked by the chief, which is why I was picking on the fire department. And I've already explained that I'm not picking on the fire department. I am responding to budgetary increases. And I just have one other comment. At 1 hour and 1 minute and 40 seconds of the Fire Commission meeting, you talked about, you were very appreciative of Mr. Frieda's support for adding new firefighters and new apparatus. I want to remind you once again, Mr. Chairman, that during my tenure on the Board of Selectmen, I have spoken publicly and supported every new apparatus purchase ever requested by your department. And as far as supporting firefighters, in that first year, when the chief came before the Board of Finance at the fire department workshop and requested 16 new firefighters, the Board of Finance said no, they gave none. I was the only elected official that year, not on the Fire Commission, who supported hiring more. And in fact, I publicly stated and wrote that I supported hiring 4 more firefighters that first year. And again, I have supported all fire apparatus, and I also supported the tax abatement ordinance and the all amendments requested for the volunteer firefighter pension fund, including at last night's town meeting. I supported that. So I've had plenty of support for the fire department, but I have questioned the use of specifically the ladder truck going on medical calls. And I was particularly taken off guard or surprised when the fire chief said that because of the PSAR, the use of the ladder truck to go to medical calls would actually increase. And that's why the bulk of our discussion back and forth was about the use of the ladder truck. And again, I have been very consistent, Mr. Chairman. I am fully supportive of more firefighters, of firefighters being used to activate a second medical call, a second medical apparatus. And in fact, Mr. Chairman, the work study group that was chaired by the Board of Finance Chairman, Mr. Monaco, when they gave 27 recommendations for how to improve the board of the fire department, their only recommendation regarding personnel was to do exactly what I had been suggesting. They wanted to hire more firefighter paramedics and put another ambulance on duty with our paid career firefighters. And again, I never heard that they were derelict in their duties. I'm the only one derelict. I'm the only one trying to manage. I'm the only one accused of trying to manage the fire department. Now, what I'm trying to do is give the town citizens the best services at the lowest cost. So I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, the opportunity to address you all tonight and to comment on some of the comments you made about me. I again want to say that I would like to invite you, Mr. Chairman. I sent you an email and you never responded. I would like to invite you to appear with me on my NHTV show, Speaking Freely with Sally, so that you and I could have a face-to-face and we could do it in a very safe way, socially distant way. If you could appear with me on my show so that we could have a direct person-to-person, fair, reasonable, and respectful discussion of the fire department. I would really like that. And again, I respectfully request that you withdraw your comment that I am derelict in my duties as third selectman. I take my duties and my oath very seriously, sir. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to address you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I will respond regarding your courteous invitation to attend your program. I will not attend that. I believe that any issues that need to be discussed as far as the fire department is concerned needs to be done at a fire commission meeting where all fire commissioners are able to contribute to the discussion. So I appreciate your offer. I respectfully decline. But I thank you very much
that's a
for your
reasonable answer. And as you know, I have attended many fire commission meetings, and so I understand your comment that it would be better to discuss it in front of the full commission. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, I've been unable to attend meetings and haven't been able to give public comment. You're probably happy about that. I'm very sad about that. Not only your meeting, but Board of Finance meetings. Are you considering allowing folks to give public comment by phone while we continue through the pandemic, sir?
That hasn't been discussed among our commissioners, but it certainly could be discussed, and we'll take up that matter among our commissioners.
I appreciate that because I know the Board of Ed has started allowing for live phone-in public comment, and I believe that the Board of Selectmen is going to try to do that as well. The public has been deprived of participating via public comment since last March or so with this awful pandemic that we've all been struggling with. So I think I appreciate your willingness to at least consider a live public comment by phone while we continue to struggle. I think we've got another at least 6 to 8 months of struggle with this pandemic. I don't know how you feel about that, with this vaccine process. But so I appreciate your willingness to consider phone-in public comment.
Very good. Do you have any other comments that you'd like to present to the commission this evening?
No, I made all of my comments, and I want to thank you and the First Selectman's office for arranging this opportunity for me to address the comments that were made about me at the December 22nd, 2020 Fire Commission meeting.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good. Ready to move on?
Okay, I'd like to move on to our agenda. Thank you for being patient with our swearing-in ceremony for Sarah Barbero, Michael Benson, and Vincent Williams. Certainly on behalf of the commission, I thank them for their dedicated service as volunteer firefighters to the town and look forward to them serving our residents in many years to come. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Board of Fire Commission held on December 22nd, 2020. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Do I hear a second to the motion? Do the commissioners, are any of you muted? I can't hear anyone except for Commissioner Zuccarelli.
So
Would you be
moved.
kind enough? Okay, is that Mike Zuccarelli?
No, that's Mary J. Mulligan.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Commissioner Capucci?
No. So can we,
Who's it?
this is Jenny.
Go ahead.
Can we
Yeah.
have I guess my microphone wasn't all the way in, but I just want to have a quick discussion on the minutes because,
Yeah, I asked if there was any question on the motion. Go ahead, Jen.
yeah, unfortunately I was talking, but you guys couldn't hear me because my microphone wasn't plugged all the way in. But
Yeah, go ahead.
So the first thing is there was the motion to accept the minutes last time. We had a quick discussion where I explained why I was voting no, but that was not included in the minutes. And I think if there's a motion that's occurring and someone is explaining why they're voting no, that should be included in the minutes. So there's some reference as to why there was a no vote. The second thing is included in the minutes, which I was glad to see, was the discussion around the comparison of the fire department budget and the police department budget that I brought up. The only thing is it's not 100% accurate because it says that they determined that the budget was not significantly greater. The issue was that the departments have the police department has a much higher budget than the fire department. What I was talking about was the percent increase over time, the amount that the police department budget increased versus how much the fire department budget increased was not significantly different. So I think that needs to be corrected because otherwise it's going to look like the police department and the fire department budgets are similar, and they're not.
We will make that modification to the minutes.
Okay. And then the last thing I would say is I'm in favor for, based on Sally's request, to not have the amount of detail regarding the discussion and your concerns about Sally, because I do think it, I think we need to find a way to accept that people are going to ask questions, and that even if they're uncomfortable, there's not necessarily some sort of bad intent behind it. Sometimes questions are just questions because you want information. So I personally, I've asked for more details on discussion, and this was an in-depth detail about your comments. And I've been, in the past, this is probably the third comment I've had on the minutes. I would like to see our minutes have more detail on some of the discussions we have and on the reports that the chief is providing. And maybe this, the paragraph about your discussion of the meeting, I think that for the things that, that Sally had concerns about, that maybe those should be removed. So those would be my comments.
All right, I appreciate your comments.
Do you hear me now, Mr. Chairman?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay.
I can't hear
I
you.
agree with Jenny. I agree with her 100%.
Okay, I appreciate your agreement. And so there's a modification to the minutes that Jen made. Is there any other comments regarding the minutes? Here are none. We'll accept the motion to accept. All in
So
favor?
ordered. Aye.
I'm in favor as long as the modifications occur.
The modifications to the percentile on the police budget versus the fire department budget, absolutely, that will be corrected.
And
Commissioner
one quick question. Will you include the reason why I voted no against the minutes last time?
Yeah, absolutely. You refuse to vote for it as a result of it not being complete, I'm sorry?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay, yeah,
right.
absolutely. Yeah, I believe that there should be a reason for explanation when there is someone who is not in favor of a vote. So absolutely, I think that is easily resolved.
Okay.
So there is a motion, seconded, and I'll ask for a vote again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear everyone. So all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so move. Okay, so 100% then. That's great. We'll ask for the chief's report.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to cover the chief's report for the month of January's Board of Fire Commission meeting. So we'll start with alarms. 4 alarms during 2020. At this time, we are at 325 alarms. Year-to-date this year, we're at 267. 5 years ago, 2016, we're at 299 alarms. Since our last Fire Commission meeting, which was on December 22nd, that's what these numbers will reflect. We provided ALS assistance to the hospital, 25 different occasions, responded to the highway on 10 different occasions, and there were 45 incidents in which just an ambulance responded to a medical call, and there was no reason to send a fire asset. 65% of our calls since our last meeting were EMS related. There were approximately 388 incidents since our last meeting, 71 of which occurred at the same time, which provides an overlapping percentage of 18%. One number I'm also going to start to report on is we've made some modifications to our reporting software recently, and we've standardized a little bit in terms of how we can document this. This is one item that's requested in some of the CAFA reports that I submit annually to the town. So this number is going to reflect dollar loss and dollar value in terms of property damage for fires. So it's the first time you probably heard about it. We did mention it at a commission meeting a number of months ago that this was something that we're going to look to start to capture moving forward now that we've developed some consistency in reports. So our dollar loss since our last meeting is just over $855,000 and total property valued at $2.4 million. A large part of that is due to a significant fire on Defco Park Road. It was a structure fire at a commercial building in which there was contents of the building and machinery that was involved in fire. But again, the building was saved as a result of the fire response. So that's the reason for the dollar loss of $855 and the value at 2.4. Some other smaller incidents in there, but again, that makes up the lion's share of that number. Regarding the current budget, year to date, at this time last year, we were at 60%. Year to date this year, 62.9%. Again, that's through period 7, which brings us through the end of January. There will be a couple of additional withdrawals taking place between now and the end of January, seeing we're only on the 26th of the month. A couple things to note regarding the budget, where we stand right now. Again, it's not too much above where we were last year, but we did see significant increases in the budget lines related to covering for COVID and employees who became ill and covering for those shifts and then the sick time and so forth. And we also are still sanitizing the buildings quite regularly. I'm going to continue to do so until the majority of the fire department staff, volunteer and career, have received their second COVID vaccination, which really should be between now and our next meeting. So until that time, I'm continuing with aggressive cleaning and disinfecting at all 4 stations on a regular basis, and that is to keep the workforce healthy and to ensure that we don't have any further, try to eliminate any further infections. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to ensure entirely. So there are 2 significant costs this past fiscal year in terms of covering for overtime and sickness due to COVID and the disinfecting of the stations that's causing that number to rise. Recent conversations, and recent within the last couple of days, is we're continuing to have conversations with the state of Connecticut and FEMA to further capture our expenses and get it covered through FEMA. I'm meeting again tomorrow with the finance director and first selectman with a representative from the state office, OPM, in which we're going to continue to advocate for covering these expenses. So if you start to see that budget number coming back down the next couple of months, it's because we were successful in getting those expenses covered by FEMA. Otherwise, regarding the budget, since our last meeting, just over $14,000 collected in permit fees, which brings us to just under $94,000. Regarding the fire marshal's office, I included a copy of the fire marshal's monthly report in your agenda that went out. Nothing significant to discuss there. Again, we've been a little behind in getting some of the inspections, the annuals and the triannuals completed. That's only because of some of the restrictions we still have on gaining access and people being a little uncomfortable with an inspection. Of course, we're acting on complaints and we're acting on significant issues, but some of the routine inspections did slow down over the last couple of months. We do expect those to pick right back up, and we'll get on schedule here shortly. Regarding training, been covering over since our last meeting, fire alarm systems. If you think about the number of commercial buildings and residential occupancies, particularly multifamily residential occupancies we have in town, there is a wide variety of fire alarm system manufacturers, types, and so forth. So our staff has been training on those different systems that when we respond to those addresses, they have an idea in terms of how to effectively determine where the incident is occurring, how to mitigate that scene. We've been covering some vehicle fires, and thankfully it did get cold for us the last few weeks, so we had the opportunity to cover some of our cold weather emergencies, which includes things like chimney fires, ice rescue, and things of that sort. I have a few items for sick and injury through executive session, and that's all I have for a chief's report at this time.
Any comments or questions on the chief's report?
I just
Yes,
have one.
I would like,
Oh, sorry,
go ahead, Jen.
Joe. No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead, Joe.
yeah, several times I pulled into the Northeast Firehouse, Chief, and it doesn't seem like much is being done as far as the training tower in the back. Did they shut down for the winter, or what's going on?
That's on agenda number 5, Joe. As far as the training facility is concerned, we can certainly address that, but Chief, go ahead. You can answer that question.
I'll cover that now. That's fine, Commissioner. So since our last meeting, the foundation was poured. Rebar was installed while foundation was being poured, and we're expecting a drainage system to be installed shortly. If you go back, you'll notice that the foundation is covered right now. They're allowing it to cure. It's taking a little bit longer because of the weather that we're experiencing, but it's a small enough area where they can cover it, do some temperature control, and allow that concrete to cure. That project in totality is expected to take about 7 months for completion. They started about a month ago, so we have every expectation that by early summer, late spring, that building will be complete. So it's slow in the last couple of days because they're just waiting for the concrete to cure.
Oh, okay, thank you, Chief.
And Jen, you had a question as well?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the ALS transport to the hospital. So can you give just a little more detail? Is that that our ambulance is transporting, or is that, and is there, I know that there was at one point the expectation that there would be reimbursement for transport. Can you just give some clarification to that?
Sure. So when I say 25 assists to the hospital, that's going to be a combination of both times that we may have transported and times that we may have assisted. And again, a lot of it depends on what the fire personnel find when they arrive on scene. For example, if there's just an extra set of hands needed, and because the patient is critical enough, again, sometimes it's very difficult for even a paramedic to take care of patient care in that way with only one person. So there will be times that a paramedic may assist into the hospital, and then there's going to be other times that, as I've explained in the past during other meetings, not so much this meeting, that the ambulance company may provide 2 EMTs, in which case, and the patient needs ALS care, In that case, we will provide transportation to the hospital in our ambulance, in our rescue, and we'll place the ambulance from Nelson Ambulance back in service to respond to other incidents. So when I say 25, it's always going to be a mix, month to month.
And is there a mechanism for reimbursement if we do transport?
And no matter what we do, whether we assist or whether we transport, there's reimbursement associated with both.
So those are billable events.
Yes.
Jen, those are billable events.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify that. And so the other question is if our vehicle transports to the hospital, then the Nelson vehicle remains in North Haven. So it's not leaving North Haven then without the ability to, if another call comes in. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that's correct, and that's different than what happened in the past, where we would take our rescue and follow the AMR ambulance to the hospital and essentially take two vehicles out of service for that one patient. Because again, now we're dealing with ambulances that are dedicated to the town of North Haven. It's the department's initiative right now and goal to ensure that we no longer do that, that we always try to keep it so that only one vehicle is associated with the transport.
Okay, all right, great. I just wanted to clarify because I know there were questions about what happens when there's transport and what gets left behind and that kind of thing. So thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions of the chief regarding his report? Here are none. I'll accept the motion to accept.
So ordered.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, opposed? So moved. Correspondence.
Correspondence, I have nothing significant other than the regular day-to-day correspondence.
I'm sorry, we got some background sounds. Would somebody please mute your phone?
Correspondence, Chairman, I have no significant correspondence other than the routine day-to-day correspondence in the department.
Yeah, salute.
I hear it too, Pat.
I think it's the 4357 needs to be muted.
Thank you, appreciate you catching that. It's been muted, thank you.
Okay. Have any commissioners received any correspondence?
No.
I personally have received two correspondence. One from a resident by the name of Gary George, who submitted an email with some recommendations and suggestions to the chief regarding apparatus and transport. And second communication from our Commissioner Jen Cardwell requesting that a town attorney be present at the meeting to address a number of issues. To that effect, Jen, obviously we received your email last night. If you'd be kind enough to send your questions to me, we can certainly address those questions.
Okay,
So
that'd be great.
I appreciate that. Hearing the fact that there are no other correspondence, we'll discuss unfinished business of the fire department.
Hey, one quick other question. The email that came from Gary George, is that something that can be shared with the other commissioners?
Yeah, he forwarded that to myself and to the chief. We can certainly send that. It's a lengthy email. Yes, absolutely, we could do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Unfinished business of the fire department.
Unfinished, I have listed on your agenda a state of the fire apparatus, which is a topic we normally cover. So just an update to the commission. Annual preventive maintenance are continuing to move forward right now. And again, that includes pump and DOT checks. If it's a ladder truck, it includes a ladder check and DOT checks. Those checks are nearly complete. And again, no surprise at this point in time. We have identified in the past the age of our fleet. It's worth just noting that we are going to part with a 29-year-old pumper. It's the former Engine 8 at Montewies, and it's no longer going to be in possession of North Haven, town of North Haven here shortly. We do have it actively for sale, and we're going to part ways with it. It serves no purpose moving forward. It's been replaced in terms of being a frontline apparatus, and it's not something that we're interested in terms of maintaining for training moving forward. Beyond that, I just had listed budget presentation recap, and this is just to allow any commissioners to ask any questions they may have regarding the budget presentation. And again, I think I've been over this in the past with the commission. Vehicle maintenance was requested to go up, equipment and supplies for civil defense. I think it's important to note that that is a line associated with the fire department budget, but it's truly a separate department. It's emergency management. It just happens to fall underneath, at this point in time, the fire department. The equipment line was requested to increase the training, and then some contractual replacement increases and overtime increases. And again, that's all due to wage increase. The 2 additional firefighters was requested, and then the capital request. The most significant of which is the fire apparatus, which we're hoping to purchase 2 apparatus. The initial down payment would be $120,000, followed by 5 years of payments at $300,000. And that's a lease to own. So that's what I have for the budget presentation recap. I've heard nothing further. I provided a documentation the Board of Finance requested. I've provided that back to the Director of Finance, Ed Spinkowski, so that he may forward the requested documents on to the Board of Finance, as he has all of their contact information. Beyond that, I had referenced here the training facility, which we've already covered, and that's all I have for unfinished business.
Any questions to the chief regarding unfinished business?
Just a quick question about the budget presentation. When you were talking about the apparatus and the lease versus purchase, can you just you had indicated that purchasing that leasing actually costs less, I believe. How did you calculate that? I'm just trying to figure out, because we had talked about trying to come up with some kind of plan for replacement of apparatus more proactively, which you had talked about in the past. So I'm just trying to get a sense of what the lease versus the purchase options.
Sure. So the few things to keep in mind when it comes to it's a lease to own. So it's basically just a purchase with structured payments is all that it is. And because the town does have such favorable bond rating, the interest rates would be extremely low. We found that out when we did the same thing with the ladder truck that we are going into our next fiscal year will be the last payment we have to make for that. So the biggest differences in this is going to be the fact that we have the ability to replace 2 of our oldest engines, which are dependent on maintenance. And again, as I pointed out during the budget workshop, it's not just a dollar number for the maintenance that's of concern. It's also the operational readiness of this apparatus. Getting inside of a 25-year-old plus apparatus and expecting it to start to respond to an emergency every single time is, quite frankly, it's crazy to think that's going to happen every time. These apparatus do have a lot of moving parts and electronics, and we're finding that not only are they costing a lot to maintain, but they're incredibly unreliable as well. So the cost savings is such in that the typical cost of fire apparatus increases 4% every year. So if we were to take the average cost of an engine right now, which is between $600,000 and $800,000, that puts it at about $30,000 a year increase in apparatus cost. So at this point, if we were to secure the purchase of 2 apparatus and buy them at the 2021 current rate versus, again, waiting to buy a second apparatus 3-4 years down the line, there'd be a significant cost savings to that right now, just in terms of capturing the purchase price of the apparatus before $30,000 a year of inflation, the operational readiness of it, perhaps saving on our maintenance. I showed in general the overall number of apparatus in the department during the Board of Finance meeting, and I showed that by removing just 2 of our apparatus that were very maintenance dependent, a former engine and a former ladder truck, I was able to show the cost savings on a maintenance over a long period of time. So my anticipation is that if we continue to purchase these 2 apparatus, we can actually, in moving forward, bring down the apparatus repair line because we'll have newer apparatus, they'll be under warranty, and so forth. It's important to note that the apparatus that if we were approved in this next fiscal year, they are going to take 14 to 16 months for completion. So we are looking at all of next fiscal year, in which we still need to continue to carry with the fleet that we have and maintain the fleet that we have. Did I answer your question?
Somewhat. So let me just, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So the question about lease in terms of, does that go into the lease payments go into the operating budget versus like a bond that would gets listed separately, correct?
Yeah, so if you look at the way the ladder truck was listed, and even the SCBA's, because I've done something similar, proposed something similar, and the Board of Finance acted upon both, is the initial payment and the subsequent payments thereafter all fall into the 5-year capital plan listed at the end of the fire department budget. So I've identified a $300,000 expense every year for the next 5 years.
So regardless, it's going under the capital plan.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And keeping in mind the reduction of 2 of those lease to buy agreements that are coming off. The apparatus is coming off in this budget, and the SBA equipment is coming off as well.
Yeah, I think that's something important to note, is that while this year is $120,000, I'm asking of additional capital from the town of North Haven this year to make that initial down payment and secure the construction of these 2 apparatus. Next year, the $211,000 for the ladder truck is no longer going to be in place. I'm sorry, so let me make that clear. This next fiscal year that we're going into will be the last fiscal year I have to make a payment. The following fiscal year, that is our last payment that had been made. So essentially, I'm asking for $300,000. We're going to be dropping $211,000 from the ladder truck. It'll be our final payment. I understand that we've already dropped the $80,000 that we were paying on the SCBA's. So we almost have $300,000 right there. So it's not a big shift. It's just taking allocation of payments that were going towards 2 items and putting it all towards essentially one line, which is the apparatus line, but for 2 apparatus.
And Chief, with the lag from the ordering time for the new apparatus until delivery, we're looking at approximately 12 to 14 months?
14 to 16 months.
14 to 16 months. So we don't begin making the payment. I mean, we have to give them a down payment to
Next
be
fiscal year.
This fiscal year in order to secure the building of the 2 apparatus.
Right.
But we don't begin to make the payment for 14 to 16 months. Is that correct?
That's correct. So this next fiscal year would be $120,000 I've requested, that initial down payment, and then the following fiscal year would be the first time that we would make a $300,000 payment. Yes.
Very good. Is that clear, Jen?
Yes, and I just want to say I'm all in favor of making sure that we have apparatus that are not in the 26, 29 year range. I think that is an issue. So I'm absolutely in favor. I'm just in my mind, I'm just trying to figure out, I think we need to look at, which we talked about last time, a plan for funding replacement apparatus. And I think it would be great to be able to have the data that you're talking about in terms of how much money once the fleet is in better shape in terms of age, where the maintenance costs end up landing in terms of savings, because I think that would be helpful information.
Sure.
Oh, very well said. Any other questions regarding unfinished business?
Pat.
Here none. We'll,
Pat.
yeah, so
I think I was muted when you were going over correspondence. I just wanted to mention that I went on the app Nextdoor. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but it's about North Haven, about things that people sell and whatnot. But anyway, I posed a question to the Monowese section of that app, asking them for some of their opinions on manning the fire station with career firefighters. And the response was overwhelmingly positive. I got about 30 responses from people that just live in Monowese, not just for manning with career firefighters, but also some very supportive comments regarding the volunteers and the support that the area of Montauk would give to the volunteer services. And I tried to reinforce the fact that the volunteers would be staying to supplement the career firefighters, even though they're not 24/7, 365. At some point they may be. But the responses for the work that the volunteers have been doing has been very supportive and very glowing, and people are very appreciative of their neighbors dedicating and donating their time both to fight fires and to contribute to the community service projects as well. So I just wanted to stick that in there so everybody would know that the neighbors of Montauk are very supportive of the efforts of the fire service.
Very good. Thank you.
I'll keep you posted on any more as they come in.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments and for that correspondence. Thank you. Moving on to the discussion of new business for the fire department.
New business, just a follow-up. We're pursuing conditional employment offers for 3 recruits at this time, and we're hopeful to get them into the Connecticut Fire Academy. I'm not at liberty to discuss anything further than that because it is still all conditional. But by the time we meet our next meeting, I'll know exactly which academy we're going to be placing them into. And again, it's going to depend a lot on timing.
Okay. And on that subject, I did inform Jen of the fact that we did in fact hire 2 EMTs and a paramedic on a conditional basis. Certainly they need to meet all of the criteria. And again, as the chief indicated, to be determined which fire academy that they will be going to. The next item is the good of the fire department. Now, this is the area where we had listed our third select woman, Sally Buemi, to address the fire commission. I thought as a courtesy to her being on the call that we would have her make her comments up front. Are there any commissioners that have any comments or thoughts regarding our third select woman's comments this evening?
Well, I would like to just say that, her description of your comments being vicious, I think that was a little bit over the top. I've known you for over 60 years, and I don't think you have a vicious bone in your body. If it was me, on the other hand, I could understand it. But I certainly didn't think that any of your comments were vicious. I think you took exception, as you should have, to the what's the word I'm looking for? The inference that some of our staff somehow colluded with Nelson Ambulance to get them into our town. I didn't think that that was appropriate for her to even bring that up. I just didn't see the point. And that's all I have to say with regards to that.
Okay.
I personally, I think the issue that she took to, I don't think Sally, in her question about whether someone worked for Nelson, there was an implication that she was saying there was a backroom deal. And I just think that was some of her point, was that it was interpreted that way, but that was not her intention. I know for me personally, I have asked multiple times to be able to see the budget, like all the other boards and commissions, and the interpretation of that question has always been that somehow or another I want to micromanage the fire department. So I think what Sally is trying to clarify is it wasn't an inappropriate question, and I think she felt that it was misinterpreted. So, and I do think we have to have the ability to ask each other questions without trying to figure out what the meaning behind the question is. Because when you try to put meaning on a question, you stop the discussion. And the best solutions that come out of boards and commissions and town meetings are ones where people are able to openly discuss differences of opinion on how things work and how things are funded, and maybe coming up with a solution that meets everyone's needs. And in doing that, I think it's very important to think about language, especially with looking at what's going on nationally, to make sure that we're not assigning negative intentions to questions when there was no negative intention behind it.
Well,
Any other?
I just want to add, when she speaks of, her responsibility to the town and to get the biggest bang for the buck, and that's what we're here for. That's what we were elected to do, and I think we do a pretty good job of it. The fact that there was such an increased request in the past budgets recently has been, the 16 firefighters. I think that was part of a grant requirement that we had to, at least request it, I think. I don't think anybody expected to get 16 firefighters in that budget year. And the fact that there's been all these increased requests by the fire department, I think they have to go back and look at the decades of neglect that the fire department experienced in the past, I would say, decade. I mean, when you have fire apparatus that's over 25, 30, almost 30 years old, when requests were made and just denied, I mean, there's something wrong with that. Go ahead.
I was going to say 100% agree, which is why I did that sort of look back last time over a longer than a decade. It was as far back as I could go for what was on the website. And the increases are not consistently always the fire department is high and the police department is 1 to 2%. That was not the case. So I think certainly we should be presenting that data on a regular basis to be able to a conversation with someone recently who had the perception that the fire department was constantly asking to increase their budget. And I went through the numbers and they said, and look at where the fire department is compared to the police department currently. And there's someone who knows the fire department pretty well. They didn't realize that. So it didn't need to become about you're right or someone's wrong. But it was really just that I was able to present the data for them to recognize something that they hadn't thought about before. So I think that's the bigger thing in terms of Sally's comments today. I think we just need to be really open to hearing people's opinion without taking it on as a personal attack, so that we can talk about facts and maybe, get people to understand what the fire department needs, because that's really what we should be doing, is making sure the fire department has what they need to provide services to the town. So I agree 100% with everything you just said about, the funding has been off for a long time.
Yeah. I certainly appreciate your in-depth financial comparison in budgets and percentile of budgets between the fire department and the police department. I thought that was clear last month, and I think there are many people that still misrepresent what the fire department has requested. And Mike, you're 100% correct. That was a grant request for the 16 firefighters that continues to be brought up as if, we were willy-nilly looking to bring that many firefighters on board. It was a proposal based on a grant request. So, but again, I think those kind of things and words continue to come up that just makes the fire department look like we're gouging the town when in fact we have not done so. We've been just looking to catch up from many years of neglect, to use your words, Mike. So thank you both for that, those comments. Any other comments regarding our third selectman's comments tonight?
No.
All right, hearing none, I've got some comments. Firstly, I do want to apologize to the third selectman for using the term derelict in her duties. I think that was a poor choice of words, and I apologize for that. Secondly, I believe that on the December 3rd Board of Selectmen meeting, our first selectman allowed our third selectwoman to review an agreement that was established by and negotiated by the town attorney, the chief, the fire chief, the deputy fire chief, and certainly the first selectman. All of the language and the content of that agreement was for the best interest of the residents. And certainly, I noted at the beginning of my comments the 5 or 6 additions to the agreement that would enhance the services of the town and the communications and the GPS and so on and so forth. Those items those were the items that I was indicating that were not acknowledged during that Board of Selectmen meeting. So on our meeting on the 22nd, I voiced my opinion, and Jen, I think you're exactly correct. I think we all need to have open lines of communication and be willing to listen to each other. Because obviously, just not one person has the right to speak. So I certainly voiced my opinion as to what was said and how it was said. And yes, I did take offense to the question that had no bearing on the agreement that the first selectman allowed our third select person to review and ask questions on as to whether or not any of our chiefs worked for Nelson Ambulance. And it was not determined 2 years ago that Nelson Ambulance was going to be the ambulance company that we would select. As a matter of fact, there was discussion that AMR potentially would be able to be recontracted, assuming that they would adhere to all of the wishes and the content that the chief and the town attorney and the first selectman wanted to include. But as a result of a very contentious hearing and court case, obviously AMR was not part of that equation. So, and I think the town attorney explained why Nelson Ambulance was the appropriate company to oversee our services as far as the ambulance is concerned. So, and I know that our third select woman wanted me to appear before the Board of Selectmen. Our first selectman said no, it would be appropriate for her to come before our commission to voice her concerns. Certainly, a article in her, I was just thinking, was written, and it was stated that there was troublesome examples of disrespectfulness has recently occurred, and I urge folks to watch the December 3rd meeting of the Fire Commission. She clearly indicated that she was viciously attacked. And I'm in agreement with Commissioner Zuccarelli. I don't think my words were vicious. I think those words are just absolutely inappropriate to print. And then to invite me to go to a meeting on North Haven Public TV, which is her meeting, to discuss Fire Commission issues. And I'm glad that she was in agreement with me for not accepting that invitation, because I firmly believe that all issues of the fire department should be aired and discussed here within the Fire Commission, so that all fire commissioners have a right to weigh in on any of those discussions. So I think it appeared to me that my comments caused the third select person to have, a bit of thin skin and really lashed out at me, thinking that I lashed out at her, when in fact I was just responding to her comments. we all are lashed out by, whether it be fellow commissioners or residents, and we need to have thick enough skin. Otherwise, we need to step down from our positions, whether it be myself or the third select person. So, that's entirely up to the person to do whatever they wish to do. But as a result of that, certainly, I also feel that it is insulting and disrespectful to our chiefs and to our department that our third select woman continues to communicate with fire departments around the state, asking their opinion as to what we need to do in our fire department, when she in fact could pick up the phone and call our fire chief and ask Chief Januszewski what his thinking is. I mean, I think it's just unbecoming, and certainly it's our responsibility as fire commissioners. And I thought I made that point very clear, that the third select woman had every right to study and learn and do whatever she needed to do to become learned on subjects as it pertains to her position as a select person, as we need to be as fire commissioners. So my suggestion would be for the third select woman to stop contacting other departments around the state and start communicating with our fire chief to learn about what's happening in our fire department. And the other comment that was made tonight regarding the union president at the time, or representative, Mr. Marino, who made a comment to the third select woman. He was a representative of the union. He was not a representative of our commission or the administration of the fire department. So we did not agree with those comments then. We don't agree with them now. And, to bring them back up at this commission meeting is inappropriate. So I could understand that the third select woman was not pleased about those comments, but I'm going to talk about thin-skinned again. As elected officials, people lash out at us, and we need to be able to move forward and move beyond that. So the other issues that were brought up tonight, as far as the Board of Finance is concerned, and that group that met to discuss a number of issues, and there were a number of months that those discussions took place. About 80% of what was discussed among those Board of Finance members were issues that we brought to the table. They were written documents that we had already agreed upon as fire commissioners, that they agreed upon. The only thing that they wanted to do was rearrange how the medical response took place, and we were in disagreement with that, as we continue to be in disagreement with it. We are in agreement with our fire chief and the two deputies who have 56 years of fire administration experience, numerous advanced degrees in education and fire service, literally hundreds of courses that they've taken throughout their career in the fire department. And my trust is in their decision, not in the Board of Finance's decision, not in our third select woman's position or opinion. They are not firefighters. We have paid administrators that have skill and expertise, and that's where my allegiance and that's where I believe that those folks need to make the decisions and the best decisions for the residents, business owners, and visitors of our town. And I, as a fire commissioner, am in total support of that. So yes, I think other commissioners could caucus. They could discuss what the finances are. They could discuss how much of the budget they're going to allocate to our fire department. They could discuss whether or not they want to agree to a lease agreement for two apparatus. But the truth of the matter is, Our chiefs are going to make the decision as to how to run this fire department, and our Board of Fire Commissioners are going to vote on whatever we feel is best for the department. We are the elected fire commissioners. So I think the select person needs to do what they do on their board. The Board of Finance needs to do what they do, and we need to do what we need to do. So those are my comments in response to this evening's response from our third select woman. I appreciate the fact that she came on board, and I'm pleased that she was appreciative that we gave her this opportunity to voice her opinion. I'm going to once again ask, is there anyone else that has any other comments on this issue? Hearing none, I'd like to move on to moving into the executive session. So I'll entertain a motion to move
Chairman?
into executive session. Yes.
I'm sorry, not on the last topic, but I have one other thing under good of the fire department that I just wanted to ask, and it won't take a lot of time, but I know.
Please, go ahead. Go right ahead.
Yeah, yesterday we had a town meeting and there was a vote to amend the volunteer fighters pension program, and I just wanted to see if I attended last night, and the chief's explanation of when the pension started was very helpful, because we were only last night amending something that was already in place. I just wanted to see whether we could get a little bit of just a brief understanding of how the pension program works for volunteers in terms of how they access it, how long, I know there was the issue of they can get it once they're 60 and being it for 5 years, but just in more simple terms, how often do they actually have to, you can have someone on the volunteer roster and they might not actually be active. So how that all works, just because I think for the public, it's a question. And then there was something that someone called me and asked me about, and I couldn't really answer it. I know the changes came about from meetings that the chief had and Mike had with the captains. But someone asked me where the rank and file volunteer firefighters asked about the pension and what they wanted and how much input they had into those changes that were made.
Sure. So, Commissioner, I'll try to answer both your questions. So, with the changes just taking effect last night, I haven't put it to memory what those tiers are, but it's a tier system now. The way that it had previously been set up was the pension was set up. You accrued a credible year of service based upon points, and there was point values associated with different things that you could do as a volunteer. That document, and to be able to follow that document the way it was written, has been almost impossible for the last at least 10, 15 years. It predates my tenure as chief. The document was written at a time when volunteer associations, of which there is 3, and there continues to be 3 today, was responsible for tracking the members' activity to determine if there were enough points attained that would then say that it was a credible year of service. It was all kinds of things that you could do to get those points, and we agreed that it was something that in the last several years, even again pre-me, it's not something that we were able to even keep track of. So what we did was that was due for a modification, and a credible year of service is any member who is able to respond to at least 25% of the incidents and 50% of the drills in any given year. That credible year of service is determined on every other year. So every other year, I receive a list of volunteers from the finance department in terms of what their last calculated credible year of service was, and we determine if the last 2 years that have passed are also going to be counted as a credible year of service. That's been a way that's been done in this department for a long, long time. The only thing that changed was identifying a credible year of service. In terms of the value, I think it's tremendously valuable to the volunteers, because there is not a tax abatement program set up for non-residents that are volunteers. And as I explained last night, fortunately, we have a number of volunteers who do not live in North Haven. They live in a neighboring town, but they live very, very close to the town of North Haven, which is why they're allowed to volunteer. If you think about the way that our town is geographically, I may have a volunteer who lives on a street in Hamden that's closer to the West Ridge Firehouse than, let's say, even a volunteer that lives in North Haven but lives up on Blue Hills Avenue, just because of the proximity of the neighborhoods. So we do allow, in some cases, an out-of-town resident, and we do have a number of them, particularly in the West Ridge side of town, and they're not able to take advantage of the tax abatement program because they don't pay taxes in North Haven. So this is another value added available to non-residents as well as residents that are volunteers, because it allows for that tiered system and allows for them to obtain, there's a slight increase in what they're able to collect. There was some talk in there about officers, and the officers, it was, again, on the former point system, there were various levels of rank that a volunteer could obtain as an officer. And quite honestly, a volunteer typically, if they become an officer, they typically move up the ranks rather fast. And we just associated the term officer to be any officer, rather than try to keep track of what level officer they were. If you can only think back, going over this every 2 years and trying to calculate this, it just becomes very cumbersome to do so. Quite honestly, if the volunteer provided service to the community of 25% of the incidents and 50% of the drills, then they got credit as a credible year. We just got to keep it as simple as that. If they're an officer of any capacity, they get an extra bump that we factor in every other year. And that's all this came down to, is just trying to clean that up and provide some incentives for them so that we can hopefully retain the ones that we have and perhaps attract some others. In terms of input, so yes, back in 2018, I believe it was, myself, the first selectman, and 3 of the volunteer captains, and I believe at the time, 3 of the volunteer association presidents. Again, there's an association in each volunteer station at this point, and there's a social entity within that association, and there's a president-elect that represents the body at whole. And we met with not only the captains, but it may not have been that same meeting, but we have met with the association leadership as well. So they were the ones who identified the priorities of that Mike Frieda laid out yesterday. They did have input, the captains, and then each association nominated one person to represent them in the discussions, the ongoing update and discussions regarding the pension. So if you notice the 3 names that were listed last night, they were not any of the captains. They were nominated by their own peers. So there was a tremendous level of input given by all of the volunteers for the last few years.
So through the association, there's discussion, and then that information got brought into the meeting. And that committee basically, are they the ones deciding as people apply what the levels are? Is that what that committee is about? The only reason for them to meet in the future is going to be like we do with every pension plan in town, is to go over the funding of the pension plan and make any future changes that are needed. To be honest with you, when we first started to convene this, nobody even knew who was on the pension committee, the volunteer pension committee, in years prior, because it had never met in so many years. We dug everywhere trying to find it, including finance, and we couldn't find it anywhere. So it's not a committee that regularly meets because it's not a big dollar number for that pension. So it's easily funded, and it's something that's manageable. In terms of tracking it, that responsibility has shifted entirely to the chief's office, and again, that predates me. The associations no longer have any say in if it was a credible year of service or if it wasn't. It falls back to the chief's office, and again, that's because in many ways, computers and computer programs came around 25 years ago, and there's a way now of keeping track of that. Whereas when this pension plan was first created, there was no easy way to do that. It was all pen and paper kept at the stations, and that's no longer the case. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And Jen, we've had and participated. I should say I participated in some of those discussions previously, and have been totally supportive of the enhancement for the benefits for our volunteers. So I was thrilled to see last night that that was finally acted upon. So thank you for those comments. I'd like to entertain a motion to convene executive session. So I'd like to hear a motion to do so.
So moved.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Give me 1 second. Give me one
So
moment.
moved. I'd like to reconvene the January 26, 2020 North Haven Fire Commission meeting. We have one motion to make. The motion is to accept Josh Mednick as a probationary member of West Ridge Company 3 effective immediately. Do I hear a second to the motion?
Second.
Is there any question on the motion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. I'd like to ask if there's any additional business coming before this commission.
Want to see your beautiful face.
Here are none. I want to announce that the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Fire Commission will be Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021 at 6 p.m. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Welcome.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Yep.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.